The report cards are in, and the presidential candidates have been graded on their economic policy, and the professor who gave those grades is here to explain. Joining us now is former Labor Secretary Robert Reich, professor of public policy at the University of California, Berkeley. Professor Reich's film Inequality for All is now available on Netflix, iTunes, DVD, and on demand. All right, Professor, let's start with the front runner for the Democratic presidential nomination and the front runner for the presidency, since she's beating pretty much everyone in these polls. Hillary Clinton, what grades do you give her on economic policy?
Well, good evening, Lawrence. I think Hillary Clinton gets an A on explaining the problem. She was very, very effective Saturday in terms of making it very clear that inequality, widening inequality, is the central dilemma, central problem of our economy. And the analysis of that inequality was also very good. I'd give her an A or an A minus. She said that when you have so much money and wealth at the top, the people at the top can rig the game, rig the economic game to their advantage and to the disadvantage of everybody else. But I'd give her a C or D, maybe even a failing grade in terms of being specific about what she'd do about it. Now, it is pretty early in the campaign season, so I'm going to wait before I give her a final grade on that. But she didn't talk about raising taxes on the wealthy. She didn't talk about busting up Wall Street's biggest banks. She didn't talk about any of the other structural things you probably need to do to begin to reverse the trend.
But, in terms of tax increases as a specific thing for Hillary Clinton to get into now, the political consideration of that would say, don't be specific about that. Don't go into that now. I mean, in your report cards, can you factor in how they're managing the politics? And is it wise politics, for example, for Hillary Clinton to not say anything right now about the top income tax bracket?
Well, I think it's unwise not to mention that the way she's going to fund more and better education, preschool, all the other things she wants to do is by raising taxes on the wealthiest people in this society who have never been wealthier. That is not going to cause consternation among the Democratic base. It's not even going to cause consternation among the majority of Americans. Polls show that most Americans actually think the wealthy ought to be paying more in taxes, but it may cause some consternation, some upset among some of her sources of funding. And therein lies a political, a dilemma for Hillary Clinton.
All right, let's Bernie Sanders report card.
Well, I give an A to Bernie Sanders with regard to the two issues I mentioned before, that is explaining the central dilemma, that is inequality, and talking about why it is such a huge problem. I think Bernie Sanders' only weakness, and this is particularly true, and particularly anybody who's coming at this as an outsider has got to bear a high burden of proof with regard to explaining how you kind of gain the political power, the political clout to turn things around. And I think, again, it's early in the season, but Bernie Sanders has got to talk about building a movement, how he would actually build a movement to take back our economy and take back our democracy.
And Jeb Bush's report card.
Well, Jeb Bush talks about a 4% economic growth. That is his goal. I mean, this is classic establishment Republican rhetoric. They want economic growth. A lot of establishment Democrats want economic growth. But the problem is economic growth is not going to get you necessarily good jobs. Trickle-down economics doesn't work. We know that.
And quickly before we go, Donald Trump's report card.
Well, I'd kick him out of the class. He's a class clown. We don't need them.
Robert Reich, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Lawrence.